It feels like at this time last year, the exact same thing was happening with Sun and Moon alternate arts. And the reason it feels that way is because it was literally down to like the month. Today, I want to talk about alternate arts. It's been a little bit crazy lately what is going on with these cards. We've seen insane price jumps, not just from the most popular ones, so things like the Moonbryon, the other evolutions, but even more niche ones, or just kind of the less desirable ones where when you hit it from a box, you're kind of like, oh, that could have been XYZ, could have been something so much better. These cards have all seen massive price increases literally in like the last 2 months. And it's interesting because we're starting to see some sort of stabilization. However, it's a question of, is that stabilization or are things peaking? We've even seen some cards start to have slight decreases in prices. So for example, things like the Umbreon VMAX, which I don't think should be surprising. Even right now, as I'm speaking, there's probably at least 10 of these up for auction on eBay because so many people want to sell them because they are so much more expensive than they were just a few months ago. It's actually shocking to me because the last time I was at a card convention, which was in Orlando a couple weeks ago, I have never had that many people come up to me willing to sell alternate arts, especially alternate art, like even graded PSA 10 cards at 70% of market price, which is what I usually buy at. And to me, I feel like that is one of the most telling signs because a lot of these people are actually making money regardless of whether or not they're selling at 70% or market, because a lot of these cards have jumped more than 50%. When a Duraludon VMAX PSA 10 is selling for more than $100, I feel like you know there's a problem. And I think this is just such an interesting case study because there's so many inefficiencies right now, it's actually crazy. For example, the Leafeon VMAX was selling for around like $320 as a raw card, but graded in a 10, it was only like $380, which is such a tiny premium for the price that you are supposed to be paying with PSA that it doesn't make sense because it's just not worth it to grade that card. But because these cards have all jumped so much, a lot of the singles are increasing in price as well. And then the sealed product has also spiked a lot in price. So we've seen a lot of sets sell out at the Pokemon Center, which is a place where you can get them for MSRP, regardless of where the market is at. So a lot of times when they're sitting on the shelf, that means they're above market. But when they finally run out, it can cause a huge spike in the price of cards. So this is kind of following that 2-year rule where after a set releases, typically around 2 years after, is going to be a great time to buy that set. And so now that these sets have spiked, it only causes the alternate arts to go up more in price. And also I think that at this point in the year, we were kind of looking for like the next big trend in cards. So obviously new cards are always going to be very popular in new sets like 151, but a lot of times in the hobby, it feels like there's something that is just very, very hot. And I think this is just such an interesting case of like history repeating itself. Sometimes I feel like it's silly to even talk about these things because, you know, we should know by now when we see them repeat over and over again. It feels like at this time last year, the exact same thing was happening with Sun and Moon alternate arts. And the reason it feels that way is because it was literally down to like the month, because I remember the weekend of like Card Party was like the absolute peak. And then even like the waifu cards, those full art trainers, that was even crazier. And it was also in June. And that weekend, I remember things just peaked for like a single day or 2 days and then immediately started tanking because everybody was starting to put these things to market, and then way more people started grading them too. So even after that initial drop off, as time went on, it just got worse and worse as the pops on these things increased, because it's like, yeah, the pop on this is super low, but it's just because not a lot of people were grading it. And so a lot of these, you know, alternate arts maybe that are lower pop right now can kind of have parallels to those like lower end trainers where it's like, okay, the reason these are kind of going up is because maybe relative to other things, it's like, oh, the pop is lower, but that's just because not as many people are grading them. Whereas most people, if they think their, you know, Umbreon VMAX has even a shot at a 10, they'll probably grade it. And some people, even if it's a 9, they will. So it's just interesting to kind of compare these things, because what was going on with Sun and Moon tag teams is basically a direct parallel of what is happening here, and you see the exact same patterns of behavior, and it feels like we should know at this point, but also understand that memory is very short, and also there's very high turnover, so a lot of these people maybe weren't around when Sword and Shield was coming out, or maybe weren't even around to see what happened with Sun and Moon alternate arts, or just weren't kind of aware of that, because if you're not spending a lot of time online, you might not be aware of all these things, because a lot of people, unlike me, have lives outside of things like this. So there are so many people that are kind of falling into those same traps, and whether or not now is a good time to buy alternate arts, I think depends on a lot of things. The number one though is what you're looking to get out of them. Are you just trying to add these to your collection and to hold? Are you trying to flip them? Are you trying to invest in them? I think the answer really depends. Right now, I think these are a pretty decent item to flip if you know you're going to be selling it. So for me, I did a stream a couple weeks ago where I showed that I bought basically every single alternate art in a PSA 10, and I did not do so with the intention of holding on to this for a long time. So also a couple weeks ago, you could see the stream I did in Orlando where I was bending. Sold literally like every single one of those except for I think like a Zamazenta V PSA 10. And then since then, I've been able to buy even more at 70%. I think it was like technically 71%, because I don't know if you guys have ever worked with those people who always just want that like extra little percent or extra like $10 in a trade. It's like, I don't like that behavior, but also like I don't want this deal to fall through. Lately, I've been trying to just kind of like stop people from doing that, but it just depends on the deal. So that's just an aside. I think it also depends whether you're buying already graded cards or buying singles with the intention to grade them, or just singles to kind of flip. If you buy singles, even if the market price of a 10 goes down, if you have a relatively high ability to get 10s more consistently, so if you're good at pre-grading, it can kind of offset that risk, which does help a lot, because a lot of these cards are significantly more valuable in 10s, so even if there was a price decrease. But the flip side to that is that the time it takes to grade those cards, the market price may drop enough that you might have just been better off selling them as singles at the time, especially because you're locking up so much money in those cards while they're in grading. Because again, a lot of these are very expensive singles. Like I gave the example of the Leafeon, and there's hardly any reward in that. So I'd say that is like one I would not want to touch. For example, I just got some alternate art singles in the mail, and in that deal, I could have also gotten 2 Leafeon VMAXs, and I passed on those, but took everything else, even cards that were less expensive. If you're going to collect these and you're just buying 1 or 2, especially, you know, if you're getting singles, I don't think there's much reason to worry, because, you know, these sets aren't being reprinted anymore. So although the prices may decrease in the short term, you're unlikely to see a situation where, you know, they drop 70% and then never go back up. And again, if you're buying it for your collection, it probably doesn't matter that much, but it's still nice to time when you buy things so that, you know, you can use your money as wisely as possible. I would generally recommend against buying a bunch of these to hold, because even if they go up, that doesn't mean that it was the statistically probable outcome or the best use of your money, because I think there are a lot of safer options, even if you really want to get exposure to this trend. So for example, the obvious one being to buy a sealed product, because, you know, in cases like this where there's such a huge ramp up in the price of singles, more people might be tempted to open product that they weren't otherwise going to open, even though it's now at a higher price, because the payoff is so much more. So there's kind of like a vicious cycle where the singles get more expensive, people rip the product, and of course then there's the inverse relationship between sealed product and singles. So the population of single cards will always increase up to a ceiling, which is the absolute amount that was printed, whereas sealed product will continue to decrease in terms of availability. So at the same time as I've been buying some singles and graded cards, I've also been buying sealed product, but that is stuff I'm not in a rush to sell. I think I sold maybe one thing out of a huge lot of sealed product that I bought, and I'm okay with that because I'm not too worried about these. Even if they don't go up in value, I was able to get them for a below market price. So even if they don't really do anything, it's okay. I'd say right now, the best thing to focus on is getting just deals, because there's so many available right now. The same thing I said about singles and graded cards also applies to sealed product, because it's so many people are willing to sell below market. And again, you don't have to worry about that as much, although there are probably going to be a lot of people still selling these things right now. There's less of a concern over the long term, because also when you buy a single graded card, especially when you're not buying a diverse amount, you're depending on that one single card, whereas the sealed product, if any of the cards in the set pop off, it's good for the sealed product. So it does reduce risk there, although, you know, it does also decrease the chance of getting that kind of moonshot card, which is, in my opinion, totally okay. And also, like, I would just say sealed product is lower stress. I don't make videos talking about sealed product all the time, because to me it really is like a set it and forget it type of thing. And I don't think it's something that needs to be talked about all the time, because if anything, it can just create a sense of anxiety where it's constantly on your mind and it's something that you're actively worrying about. And that's not really something I want from Pokemon cards, because I want this to be something that's fun. So at the end of the day, I think it really is just about balancing your goals with what is realistic. So shameless self-promo, I do have a Discord now, which is very active. I also have a Twitch channel, so if anyone wants to go follow that, would be very appreciative. And then the best way to support me that doesn't cost anything to you is to use the eBay affiliate link in my description. I get around 1 to 3% commission on anything people buy through the link, and it doesn't cost you anything extra, and if anything, it makes it so eBay gets less money. So don't buy anything that you weren't already intending to buy, but if you are, please consider clicking that link. And I will be at Card Party Gen 2. I'm not going as a vendor this time. I'll be going as a creator, but I'm gonna hopefully stream. So probably a lot of trading and also just showing the event, things like that. Really excited for it. And you know, the Orlando show that I did, I think was so much fun. Also showing people how to vend and just that kind of transparency, because for me, I learn best by seeing how people actually do things. And you know, when you're filming for like 4 or 5 hours at a time, you can't plan all those things out. So it just kind of really shows like what it's actually like, and also showing which deals kind of are better or not, because not every deal is gonna be some incredible deal. A lot are probably just more normal, and I really like that. And I'll actually be able to walk around the floor. Probably bad for my wallet, because I think I'm gonna impulse buy a lot of things. So that'll be next weekend. I'll be streaming on Saturday and possibly Friday and Sunday, but it really just depends. I think Saturday is gonna be the most eventful day though, so I'm super excited. So stay tuned for that. Wow.